And when I say we were prepared to facilitate peaceful protest. And I've got to say and send a shout out that I'm going to say 80% at least of the protesters that we've seen in Long Beach are peaceful. And they're out there. And you know what? I'm all about protest. I think protests are important. They change our history. But unfortunately, what we've seen, like other cities have seen, is that you've got about 80% people trying to do the right thing, and then you have another 20% who don't care about George Floyd, his family, or anybody else.
Ở đây là cái cuộc biểu tình nó đang hồi diễn hành đó các bạn, đang ở tiểu bang California, đang ở thành phố Long Beach nha, gần cái cảng đó.
Not yet, but that is our intent. As we get more resources in here to the city of Long Beach, we've asked for mutual aid. We've already gotten several police officers to join the hundreds.
Đây là ông cảnh sát trưởng mà của thành phố Long Beach. Ông nói thì mọi người rất là đồng tình với cái biểu tình, nhưng mà trong những cái người biểu tình đó 80% là người trung thực, là đi biểu tình do một cái quyền của người dân, còn 20% kia là những cái người mà người ta lợi dụng cái thời cơ mà để làm những cái chuyện phạm pháp, chứ người đập vô những cái cửa hàng mà ăn cắp. Thì gần đây nhất là mấy cái người này là người ta đập cửa hàng, mấy cái hãng giống như là LV, hàng hiệu của bóp, rồi kể cả những cái mall mà nó có cái hãng đồng hồ Rolex á, để đập vô rộng phá mà để ăn, giống như là ăn cướp vậy á bà con.
And in regards to how we do it block by block. We start looking at the areas where we're having problems, specifically the individual locations where there's been some looting. We start clearing that out, make arrests when we have to. But honestly, when this whole thing started, we wanted to facilitate a peaceful protest. We wanted voluntary compliance. And unfortunately, we had a few criminals who were just obsessed with creating chaos. And again, it's sad because I'm going to tell you something. Most of the police officers, if not all the police officers out here, probably feel exactly the same way that the protesters feel. The one unfortunate that just because you're wearing a uniform, they automatically think we're the bad guys, and we're not. We don't agree with what we saw on video thousands of miles away. Most of every officer we have here in Long Beach and in the area, they're great people. We have an outstanding relationship with our community. And what we're seeing here today, again, people coming out protesting, that's great. But it's that small group of instigators that are causing most of our problems.
At this point, if there are still the protests going on, Robert, how do you walk that fine line between allowing them to demonstrate peacefully, that 80% that you're talking about, but also knowing that there is a curfew in place and it's been in place for 2 hours now?
Trying to be very surgical in our approach.
Cái thành phố LA của John đang ở thì bây giờ là nó được ra cái luật là từ 6 giờ chiều đến 6 giờ sáng hôm nay và tới ngày mai là những người dân nào mà không có nhưng mà không có đi làm và không có gì ấy thì phải nên ở trong nhà hết, không có nên đi ra ngoài đường. Thì mình thấy cái trên màn hình đây là những người ta đi vô cái cửa tiệm quần áo nè, tối ngày cứ ôm quần áo và chạy ra thôi. Cái đó đâu có khác gì là cướp giật đâu.
Chief, you've heard of some of the officers with the LAPD who were injured. We know of an officer who was shot in the foot, I believe in the Venice area near Lincoln and Rose. Any injuries to your officers so far? Any threats?
I know we've had at least one officer get hit with some kind of an object in the head. And I got to be honest with you, I'm praying for every police officer out there on the front lines. Because if you can imagine for a second, if you are the husband, wife, mother or father, or one of these officers is your mother or father, how do you feel about them being at work tonight? And that's where I think we've got to take it to. We're all trying to do the right thing. We all have the same goals. This is not the way to make change.
Chief, do you know if the majority of the looting that we saw in Long Beach today was contained to that area? We didn't stay over the scene as long as we would have liked. Do you know if it was contained to just those stores in the Pike outlets, or had it spread to other parts of the city?
From the reports we're getting, the majority of what you saw is where we're having challenges with looting. We have had reports of other incidences. I think there's one that may have occurred just outside that area, but what's making it difficult for us is it sounds like these individuals are monitoring our radio frequencies, and they're putting in phony calls trying to send our officers to what's reported as shootings and other events that we usually respond to because we want to help people. And some of these troublemakers are using and exploiting the officers' willingness to go help victims of crime to divert us from doing the job that we have to do tonight.
Interesting. We have not heard that tactic before. Where is the bulk right now of the protesters?
Right now, from all the reports we have, they are in the specific downtown and shoreline area of Long Beach. So we have a lot of our resources focused there, but make no mistake about it, we have plenty of officers with more coming in to make sure that we have every square inch of the city of Long Beach covered, to make sure that everyone who lives here is safe.
And Chief, have you, and forgive me if you had mentioned this, but as you say, you have more officers coming in. Is the National Guard going to be a part of that, and is that something that you've considered requesting?
That's always a tool that we have in the toolbox. I know that other cities
Cái ông cảnh sát trưởng này thì ông nói là cái phần đông là cái biểu tình nó nằm ở bên cái thành phố Long Beach ở gần LA. Thì ông nói là ông đã yêu cầu nhiều cảnh sát ở các vùng khác mà đến để hỗ trợ các cảnh sát ở bên Long Beach.
And I've got to tell you, from all the departments who have sent officers here, I'm so grateful to their police chiefs, their cities, and their communities. We help each other out. We had to send officers to the city of LA yesterday because we weren't impacted here, and today we need help, and we get help from outside. It's a great partnership.
Chief, what about 2nd Street and Belmont Shore? Have you
Ông
had
nói
any
là
issues?
Hôm qua thì cái biểu tình nó xảy ra ở bên LA thì ông cũng đã đưa những cái cảnh sát của ông đến cái vùng Los Angeles để hỗ trợ Los Angeles. Nhưng mà hôm nay thì đến khi ổng là biểu tình nó nằm ở bên cái thành phố của ổng thì ông phải cần những cái thành phố bên cạnh để giúp ổng mà phải đưa thêm nhiều cảnh sát đến để hỗ trợ những người dân ở bên đây và để kiềm chế lại những người biểu tình không có làm những cái việc mà người ta không nên làm. Thì phần đông thì mình thấy người ta biểu tình rất là ôn hòa, nhưng mà có một số người nào đó người ta cố tình người ta làm những cái chuyện mà người ta phạm pháp, giống như là đập phá gì đó.
That is all retail for several blocks there. I have one other quick question, Jonathan, before I shoot it back to you. And that is, Chief, we've heard from community leaders that there will be more protests planned this week. Are you prepared for that?
Yes, we are. And you know what? We welcome peaceful protest. Like I said before, our officers, our employees feel the same way a lot of the protesters do.
Cái người phóng viên này nói là có tin là những cái người biểu tình này người ta sẽ tiếp tục biểu tình nữa rồi. Ông cảm nghĩ về sao thì ông nói ông rất là hoan nghênh những cái cuộc biểu tình, nhưng mà biểu tình đừng có lợi dụng cái biểu tình mà để trở thành mà cướp giật mà quậy phá đến cái cộng đồng.
That the death of George Floyd was unacceptable. Burning buildings and committing acts of violence against other police officers is not going to help.
Chief Robert Luna with the Long Beach Police Department, we want to thank you for spending some time with us today as we continue to see images of unfortunate looting happening in your city, but really amid a much stronger, peaceful presence of protesting there. Thank you again.
Thank you.
We know, of course, Colleen, the protests are not just going on here. They have been happening across Southern California, across the country, and even the world. And NBC4's Robert Kovacic has been keeping an eye on what's been going on. Robert.
What's been going on all across the country, Jonathan and Colleen. Now, yesterday, LA was
cái biểu tình này nó không hẳn chỉ xảy ra ở bên tiểu bang Cali mà nó xảy ra toàn quốc Mỹ luôn.
What was going on there really did captivate the attention of much of the nation, including Minneapolis, where this all began with the death of George Floyd. When you look at Los Angeles, and we show you some of the images that we have been looking at now throughout the weekend and today, of course, this is Los Angeles. Would we be remiss if we didn't mention that we had some A-listers that were participating, including we've just learned that Timothée Chalamet, the Oscar-nominated actor, was among those who was peacefully protesting. The singer Halsey claims that yesterday she had rubber bullets fired at her and that there was also tear gas involved as well. She posted some pictures on social media. Ariana Grande among those two that were taking part in the protest, all intended to be peaceful. But as you see throughout the day, things turned south, went wrong. National Guard had to be called in. We have been in touch with many different city leaders who have enacted these curfews starting yesterday and continuing this evening, and pretty much just pockets of trouble and just a few people, whether they're taking to the streets or trying
mình mới vừa
to
thấy là bộ binh của quốc gia Mỹ nha. Đây là cảnh sát ở thành phố.
Today, which would be in Santa Monica. But again, if you followed social media throughout the early morning hours, Santa Monica was going to be the target today, much the way the west side of Los Angeles, the Fairfax district, was going to be the target yesterday. Let's talk about what's going on right now nationwide. This is images from near the White House.
Ở đây là hình mình đang nhìn là ở gần Nhà Trắng nha, ở thành phố thủ đô của Washington DC.
In Lafayette Park. There have been protesters in Washington now for the last several days. On Friday night, a large gathering in the rain, trying to let their voices and their presence be known as close as they could possibly get to the White House. Right now, they're trying to get as close to the White House as possible. Multiple fires have been set near the White House, too, as the country starts to once again come to terms with a violent weekend. But let's
có nhiều người đã đốt lửa lên nhiều lắm rồi.
The nation, starting, of course, with Minnesota.
Officers arrive on the scene.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
What you are looking at is a semi-truck plowing through a crowd of protesters on a bridge in Minneapolis.
Truck started barreling down, blaring its horn with no intention. It looked like it was going to stop at all.
The governor of Minnesota describes it as a, quote, horrifying image, and that the truck was going full force. The driver under arrest, motives still not revealed. Meantime, incendiary devices have apparently been planted throughout Minneapolis, sparking fires. Another curfew in place there tonight.
Cái này là ở bên cái tiểu bang mà do cái người bệnh anh chàng mà đã bị giết chết á, Minnesota đó.
As more people take to the streets again. In Baton Rouge, Louisiana, hundreds gathered outside the Capitol building, expressing their
cái này ở bên tiểu bang Louisiana.
Numerous people stood on the sidewalks of downtown Boston, holding up signs demanding justice for Floyd in Massachusetts.
I love this community.
Cái mình thấy là cái tiểu bang Louisiana người ta biểu tình rất là có ôn hòa, người ta không có đập phá, người ta chỉ đứng đó đưa bảng lên nói để cho mọi người biết cái sự bất đồng thôi. Chứ không có giống như mấy cái chỗ thành phố khác, mấy cái tiểu bang khác.
Dozens of people got together to kneel down, pray, and sing at a protest in New Orleans. Several people protested in New York City, while NYPD officers stood in line near the demonstration. Hundreds and possibly thousands of protesters filled the streets of downtown Miami to protest the death of Floyd.
Ở đây là cái tiểu thành phố của Miami, là thành phố của Florida đó.
To be here because you know what, my brothers and sisters are in America.
fighting the fight, and we've got to show them that it's just not an American problem.
And across the pond, the crowd marched in London from Trafalgar Square past Parliament and across the River Thames. They carried banners and signs that chanted Floyd's name.
I'm tired of this constant narrative that black people it's acceptable for them to just be killed so innocently. I'm tired of waking up every day and seeing another black person dead.
Demonstrators were breaking coronavirus lockdown measures by gathering. Police said they made 5 arrests outside of the embassy, 3 for violations of the coronavirus lockdown guidelines, and 2 for assault on police in London. Okay, now forgive me, I'm technically a little uncoordinated here, but I'm going to try this for you. And there's a method to my madness, so follow me. I'm going to push play. So what you're looking at, and you can go ahead and you can look this up yourself. This is a demonstration in Denver today. Thousands upon thousands of people outside of the state capitol on their backs saying, I can't breathe, for 9 minutes. 9 minutes, the length of time that George Floyd laid on the ground in Minneapolis. So why am I bringing this to your attention?
Ông đó ông mới vừa đưa cho coi cái màn hình là ở bên tiểu bang Denver, Colorado đó, thì là nói là những cái người biểu tình á, người ta rất là ủng hộ. Người ta chỉ ngồi một chỗ thôi, là người ta là nói lên cái danh ngôn là I can't breathe, tức nghĩa là tôi không thở được. Đó là những cái danh từ mà cái anh đêm đã bị chết.
And as we want to make clear, there were so many who set out in Los Angeles and different communities of Los Angeles this weekend with the very best of intentions to have peaceful protests and to be out there for only good reasons and with only the best intentions. Let's go back to you.
Robert, you should know we're trying to show it all, both sides, the peaceful protest and the lawlessness as well.
One thing left, Colleen, as I should let you know, and this was just told to me a few minutes ago, and this is relevant to what we saw nationally. Bill de Blasio's daughter, de Blasio is the mayor of New York City. His daughter was arrested last night, was one of the protesters in New York City. So the NYPD didn't discriminate there. Who they arrested, and that included the mayor's daughter.
And I wanted to add, when you were talking about Washington, D.C. and showing those fires there is a curfew in effect there from 11 to 6 in the morning, and they've actually activated the National Guard as well.
Activated the National Guard, and when you look at these pictures nationwide, it's important to keep in mind, even with something as unprecedented as 10 million people that we have here in Los Angeles County being under curfew, all those cities we showed you are under curfew at different times, some of them a little later than 8 p.m. where they're located, but those are cities all under curfew, and in those cases, in many of those cases, the curfews just aren't holding. Fingers crossed it will throughout Los Angeles tonight.
All right, Robert, thank you for that. We'll get back to you when you have some more information. But let's go up topside to News Chopper 4 Bravo. Gil, it looks like you were covering or following a caravan of squad cars.
Yeah, Colleen, we're watching a huge line of squad cars rolling southbound on the 110 freeway right now, passing the Coliseum, and we're following them southbound. We're hearing more issues down in Long Beach, so we're diverting there. We were en route to Santa Monica when we saw this huge line. Right now, they're under the overpass right now, but there's a huge response here by the, I believe this is LAPD that's sending units southbound. We did see also a group of vehicles that were heading south 5 freeway as well, so there's a chance that they're deploying to Long Beach. It's unclear though at this point what exactly they're responding to, but we are en route to Long Beach right now to check on the issues there.
All right, we're going to stay with your picture there. In the meantime, LA's police chief now defending the tactics that the officers used last night, specifically in the Fairfax and the Melrose area, to clear the streets there. They arrested nearly 400 people, we heard today, after we saw a lot of businesses vandalized, looted. Some of the buildings were burned out there as well.
Yeah, we want to bring in NBC4 investigative reporter Eric Leonard joining us live with some more details. And Eric, on really what went into the LAPD's decision-making during yesterday's protests.
Well, Jonathan and Colleen, several times during our live coverage last night, officers could be seen arresting people who appeared to be peacefully demonstrating, sitting in the street while steps away businesses appeared to be looted. Now, LAPD Chief Michael Moore says those were difficult decisions, but he's now explaining why he and his team made them. This scene, captured by News Chopper 4 Bravo on Melrose, shows lines of officers near a group of seated protesters and yards away, a group of looters stealing from a business. It appeared the demonstrators were arrested by police first rather than the looters, who could be seen carrying off merchandise for many minutes.
We have the authority and the responsibility to close that area, and the participant, the person in that group, has a responsibility to leave. And law enforcement has a responsibility when that does not happen to take action to restore order.
Other police officials tell the I-Team when a crowd is being pushed down the street, officers will not walk past stragglers or leave groups of people behind them, peaceful or not. But Moore says some in the crowd last night had shown they were willing to attack.
Bottles, rocks, containers, throwing them, sometimes hitting the protesters, other times striking officers, and creating a circumstance of injuries. I have an officer that is presently in the hospital with a fractured skull.
4 other officers were hurt. Chief Moore says if people believe they were treated unfairly, he'll have the officers' conduct investigated. He was on the scene in the Fairfax district and says he ordered some of the arrests personally. He added he's struggled with how to intervene during demonstrations when most of the people taking part are behaving responsibly.
That has been a substantial and one of these lifetime challenges of an episode of how do we do this.
Now, the chief says when events like those last night turn violent, he says the people who were there to be seen and heard and demonstrate have a responsibility to leave the area so those who are committing the crimes can be more easily stopped and taken to jail. Reporting live, I'm investigative reporter Eric Leonard, NBC4 News. Back to you.
Eric, thank you for that report. We want to get back up to News Chopper 4 Bravo, Gil Labus overhead. And Gil, you're still following this caravan of police vehicles. Any word now on where they may be headed?
Yeah, Jonathan, we watched a line coming southbound the 110 freeway. These guys are going northbound on the 110 freeway. They all exited at Florence Avenue and went east. It was a line of sheriffs, LA County sheriff's vehicles that were going southbound on the 110 freeway. Right now we're going away from this picture to look at Long Beach. We're about 6 minutes out from looking at Long Beach, but we're seeing a lot of officers being deployed different areas, and it's likely because the National Guard's on scene and it's freeing up a lot of the units to go in different areas to help and support other officers.
You know, it's interesting. We just spoke with the police chief in Long Beach, Robert Luna, and he said there was still a lot of protesters in the near Shoreline and Ocean, sort of that downtown area. But he said they were keeping an eye on 2nd Street and Belmont Shore. Anybody who's been in Long Beach knows 2nd Street has, 6 or 7 blocks of retail on both sides of the street there. And Jonathan, I found it interesting when he said they were actually getting some phony calls from people trying to divert police in the area. What we've heard all day long is that some of the police officers are not handling 911 unless it's an absolute emergency.
Yeah, we saw city officials in Santa Monica stressing do not call 911 unless it really is an emergency. But it was interesting, Colleen, to hear that, you know, these looters or whoever, what have you, people that we've been calling the opportunists today have been trying to trick the system in trying to trick where police are headed by calling in these fake emergencies. He had mentioned, Robert Luna did, the chief, that a lot of the calls that were coming in were intense calls of things like shootings, and so the things that would make police officers respond right away. Unfortunately, a lot of those calls were fake, as he had mentioned, as we're now splitting our screen here as Gil Labus heads to Long Beach to give us a better perspective of what's happening there. And, you know, Colleen, the chief also mentioned he was asking for more assistance, that the National Guard was an option. That wasn't something he was looking at yet, but he was requesting help from other agencies.
Yeah, he didn't mince words at all. He said, if people are breaking the law down there, they will be arrested. He said something like 80% of the people were protesting and they had a good cause. 20% were the lawbreakers. And he said, and this was pretty telling as well, he said most of the police actually feel like the protesters out there. He said they don't agree at all with what went down in Minneapolis with George Floyd. And so he said, you know, don't take it out on the people in uniform here because they 9 times out of 10 or 10 times out of 10 agree with you, the protesters on the other side of the line.
And perhaps, Colleen, that's why most of the protests that we did see earlier in Long Beach stayed mostly peaceful, as far as 100% peaceful, as far as we could tell. We did not see any kind of agitation or any kind of skirmish going on between the police and the protesters in Long Beach, and perhaps that's because, like the chief said, you know, his officers believe in a lot of what the protesters are saying, but you're right, he did not mince words. He talked about that 20%, he said, who were looting not far from where the protests were happening, looting several retail stores near Shoreline and then the Pike outlets, and saying that what we've been stressing all day, really taking away from the message that the peaceful protesters have been trying to push, the death of George Floyd and other police brutality across the country.
You know, this is such an interesting picture as I look at our split screen here. On the left-hand side of your screen, we see a live picture from News Chopper 4 Bravo, and then we see the pictures earlier today from Santa Monica when the protests out there were peaceful. This shot on the left-hand side of your screen, it's a beautiful picture of the skyline, Southern California. It really belies what is happening below right now. There is a curfew in effect. In Long Beach, I believe he said it went into effect at 8 o'clock. Although, Jonathan, I have to tell you, I thought that anything in the county superseded, and that curfew went into effect at 6 o'clock tonight. Santa Monica was 4 o'clock this afternoon.
And we even saw Beverly Hills, right, like we were talking earlier, institute in their business district a curfew as early as 1 p.m. And you're right, the county order does, that curfew does supersede and does cover all 10+ million people here in LA County as we continue to watch this shot from News Chopper 4 Bravo. You're right, Colleen.
Thì bây giờ mỗi cái thành phố trong CD người ta có được ra lệnh cái giờ giới nghiêm rồi. Thì Beverly Hills á, thì 4 giờ chiều, còn Los Angeles đó là 6 giờ chiều. Long Beach hình như là 8 giờ. Ở bên tay phải á, mình cái màn ảnh đó mình coi là cái thành phố Santa Monica và quay hồi lúc hồi chiều. Bây giờ là tối ở bên đây rồi. Cái lúc này là nó vẫn còn là rất là ôn hòa, ai cũng biểu tình không có bạo động.
The looting that you're seeing here, this is the REI on 4th Street that was, there were several spot fires, and again, a lot of the protesters, a lot of the city officials stressing this is only taking away from that positive message.
You know, Jonathan, I'm going to interrupt you right here very quickly. We have on the phone with us right now Jim Hellman. He's with the LA Sheriff's Department. He's the Chief of Special Operations. Sir, thank you for taking time out of what has to be a busy night for you. Can you give us an idea of where some of the hot spots are you're concentrating on right now?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's very unfortunate. I think we're all saddened by what's going on. Most, if not all, of the law enforcement community I've been in touch with, we were also concerned about the troubling video we saw in Minnesota, and it was an opportunity to certainly grow as a law enforcement culture, closer to the community. We're all in hand in hand together, and it's unfortunate that just individuals who want to disrupt the peaceful demonstrations are making a concerted effort to become violent, start looting, and just take advantage for their own purposes. And that is exactly what this is. We have intel to that effect that we're seeing, and we're seeing that in the field where it's a concerted, purposeful effort to disrupt the peaceful operations and cause violence.